Welcome back, guys. In today's tutorial we're going to look at the debugger. It's a very important tool that you need to know how to use with programming. What is the debugger? The debugger is a special tool within the compiler that allows you to have more control in seeing how your program compiles. I'm going to show you how to use the debugger, but before we get started I need to show you this basic program that we have laid out. We're going to use the debugger to keep up with the values of this program. So I have three variables here. We have var1 that equals 1, var2 that equals 5, and then user input. We're going to use the debugger to keep up with these values. The shortcut key to enter the debugger is F10. So when you press F10, it gets you right into the debugger. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create some watches. What a watch does is you can set a watch on a variable and it displays in the debugger the variable's value. So we can go to var1, which is our first value, right click on it and click on add watch. We can do the same for var2, so right click on var2, add watch, and user input, we can right click on it as well and go to add watch. Now in the bottom of the debugger you can see the watches that you have, the names of their variables, and the values. So as the program compiles and if the values change in the debugger, you can actually see the values change each time a line of code is executed. Now when you go to look at your code, you'll notice that you'll have an arrow here. What this arrow means is this is where the program is currently. So notice how it started on 15 and not at line 1. The reason for that is because from line 1 to 13 is basically, it's not the entry point of the program. The entry point is always int main. So int main is going to be always going to be the start of the program. Now you can see each line being executed whenever you follow this arrow. You can hit F10, and then each time you hit F10 it goes to the next line of code. So we hit F10, it goes to line 16, which says display a message, type in the number 1. We hit F10 again and basically goes to line 17, which is getting user input. When you hit F10 again, it executes line 17. So now it's saying get user input, type in the number 1. So we're going to type in the number 1 and hit enter. Now you click back on your screen and notice that the line 18 is about to get executed. You hit F10 and then now it's going to enter this while loop. While the user input is less than 2, run this loop. So we told the user to type in the number 1. Since 1 is less than 2, it's going to execute this while loop. Now this is where things get interesting. So you hit F10 and line 22, this line is about to be compiled. It says var1 plus plus. What that's going to do is that's going to add 1 to the value of var1. Currently we have a watch set on var1 and the value of it is 1. So whenever we execute line 22 and hit F10, this is going to change from 1 to 2. Boom. Now the second line of code we have in this loop is line 23. It says var2 equals var2 plus 10. So whenever we hit F10 and this compiles, it's going to add 10 to the value of var2. Right now var2 is equal to 5 when we hit F10. Now it turns into 15. The next line of code that's going to be executed, following the arrow, line 24, is display a message saying type in 1 to loop. So you hit F10 and then now the line of code is going to compile for user input. We hit F10 again and it comes up, type in 1 to loop. So we're going to type in 1, we're just going to loop once, hit enter, and basically now line 26 is going to be compiled. When you hit F10, line 27 is going to be compiled, but since the user input is still 1 and not 2, it's going to restart the loop. So basically it loops over back to the while and it checks the condition. So user input is still 1, so it's going to loop again. So var1 is going to have 1 added to it. So right now it says that the value is 2. When we look at our watch, when we hit F10, we notice it says 3. And var2 is going to do the same thing again. It's going to add 10 to var2 as soon as line 23 is executed. So we go to var2 in our watch, and when you hit F10, you'll notice that var2 is now 25. Now we're going to exit the loop. So line 24 says type in 1 to loop, F10, and then now it'll say try to get user input. So we hit F10 again and it comes up, type in 1 to loop. We're actually going to type in 3 and exit the loop. So what happens is when we click back on the screen, Line 26 is about to get compiled. You hit F10. No, we're going to follow this arrow. So it's at line 27. We're going to hit F10, and it loops back around. But now it's going to check on line 20 if the condition, if user input is less than 2. When you hover over it, you can also see the value of user input. See how it says user input is 3? So since it's not less than 2, what's going to do is this arrow is just going to skip all the way down outside the loop, and then it's going to go into line 29. So we haven't really discussed too much about how to make a function, but when explaining the debugger, there's a shortcut that I need to tell you. Even though if you don't know what a function is yet, I need to show you how to utilize the debugger. If you come across this, how to use a debugger with a function, you can go back and watch this video and know what I'm talking about. So basically, instead of hitting F10 to execute line 29, whenever you come across a function, you can actually hit F11, and then it will go into that function. Now, I've declared my function above int main, so whenever I hit F11, it's going to go above int main and then go into this function I have called example. Now, we hit F10, and now it starts compiling what's in this loop. So the first line of code on line 10, notice we also have the arrow here because this is the line that's going to get compiled, is var1 equals var1 plus 100. So whenever this gets compiled, var1 is going to equal 103 because we're going to add 100 to it. So F10, 103. Now we also have var2 equals var2 plus 1000. So whenever this line gets executed, we're going to see the value of var2 go up from 25 to like 1025, and that's what it did as soon as we hit F10. Now there's one last feature I need to show you with the debugger. Let's say whenever we get to our function, let's say if we wanted to do something special, what we're going to do is we're going to right click on line 10, we're going to right click, and I'm going to tell you about how to insert a breakpoint. So we're going to go to breakpoint and insert breakpoint. What this is going to do is when we run our program normally, not in the debugger, but when we run our program normally, it's going to run until it hits this breakpoint. You can see this red circle here. What this is going to do is it's going to enter the debugger once it hits this breakpoint. So that way you don't have to keep hitting F10, watching it compile. If there's one specific point that you want to get to in your program, you can run your program, and if you have a breakpoint set, then basically whenever you run the program, it'll enter the debugger when it hits that breakpoint. I wanted to make sure that you know how to use the debugger, because whenever you have problems with your code, the debugger allows you to see a little bit more in depth with the flow of your program by setting watches and breakpoints. In the next tutorial, we're going to pick up where we left off at, and I want to show you how to use switch statements and how to utilize functions. See you there.